I'm Jeff Wright, and welcome to the Blame to Fame podcast. As an entrepreneur, I have not only built an extremely successful business from scratch, but also employed thousands of men and women and helped them on their path to financial freedom. One of the most common themes for me and everyone else who has succeeded is that we never blame anyone and are aware that our success or failures fall solely on our shoulders. It was not until I hit rock bottom that I realized that only I alone could change my future. And on my podcast, you're going to hear the stories of successful folks who have gone from blame to fame in their own lives. I look forward to sharing my journey and great guests that will educate you about their path to success. Please join me each week on the Blame to Fame podcast. All right, I have a real treat for us today. I have Dr. Don Wood from the Inspired Performance Institute in Orlando, Florida. Dr. Don has an amazing program called TIPP. I've gone through this program myself. It is so helpful, and he has such an impact on so many people. Dr. Don, what an honor to have you on, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity again to talk to you and share some more ideas.
Yeah, I was on your podcast and I really enjoyed it. But tell people what the TIPP program is all about. I know what it is, but it's much better coming from you.
Yeah, basically it was developed because of the effects that people experience after having trauma. And so my wife and daughter were, classic examples of it. They both had experienced childhood trauma, and that just kept on looping and interfering with their ability to stay present and truly really enjoy life, like for what the opportunities were. So what the idea is that trauma creates an interference with our mind's ability to stay focused and in the moment because it keeps activating our nervous system. It's actually a glitch. Post-traumatic stress, anxiety, all these things that people are dealing with. When they come in and they'll say, oh, I'm dealing with anxiety, I'll say, why? What is your mind trying to get done, right? It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to call you into an action. Emotions are calls for actions. Where most people think of them as a dysfunction, I say it's a function. Let's look at what the function the mind is looking for. So we can basically reset, reboot the mind so it stops calling for actions that are unnecessary.
Well, I have to tell you, it's so needed because I know in the program you talk about how these emotions can actually trigger chemicals in your body, physically trigger them. And just the other day, I was going through something pretty stressful happening with getting the roof fixed on my house. And I just felt tight. There was nothing wrong, per se. It was just being annoyed and all this stuff going on in my mind. And I actually, pulled out my blood pressure monitor, and I'm usually, 115/70. I have really good blood pressure. It was 180/110 for no reason at all, other than just being pissed off with this roofing company.
Yep.
So what you're saying is right. It's so right. It's not just an emotional issue, but it's a physical issue as well. Am I right?
100%. And what happens is they always focus on the symptom, right? Which is the emotion. So there's something wrong. It's the same thing. I was talking to somebody the other day, when we get a cold, what do we want to do? We want to suppress it. So we immediately go out and try to get medications to suppress our cough, to suppress our fever, right? It's just the way we've been conditioned. Is that what you're supposed to do? But you're not supposed to suppress it. You're supposed to fix it, right? And so it's a natural response. So your mind was saying there's something wrong. We need to get you into action. So it was trying to get you to resolve the problem, which is what you were doing. Is resolving the problem, but your mind operates in the present. So your subconscious mind is fully present all the time. When does it want the resolution? Now. But you couldn't solve it now until somebody showed up to solve it for you.
That's exactly right.
But your mind kept calling for it to be fixed now. There's where the stress was coming in. That's the second program we're working on now, is how to deal with that kind of stress.
Well, can you tell me more about that? Because that's I think that's just a great natural progression from the TIPP program to I'm assuming this is this kind of like a maintenance to the TIPP program that you're doing?
Absolutely. Because once we eliminate the effects of trauma, the nervous system can stay regulated easier, because there's no loop of trauma on, activating it constantly. But, I got a lot of people saying, it's been life-changing for me, no question. I don't have that post-traumatic stress anymore, the things that we're dealing with. But I'm in a current situation right now that's really stressing me out. But it's not coming from the old stuff. It's coming from something now. So what we're doing is developing TIPP now. And that's going to be, how do you deal with the current stuff that's going on? And you need to have also a way to deal with that. I work with golfers, professional golfers, and it's very, very common with them, especially because when they're golfing, they've got all this time to sit around and think while in between shots. And that messes them up, because the mind starts thinking about things that aren't happening. And then it gets them into a real high level of stress. And then they got to hit another golf ball. But now their heart's pumping harder. Their mind is not staying focused. That's when they need the help more than ever.
I think I had shared this with you many years ago. I used to play at golf. It's what I like to say. I've never really been a golfer, but I could hit pretty well. I could drive straight pretty long. Didn't play that often. And one day I was meeting a friend of mine to play, and I went to hit a bucket of balls because he called me. He was going to be a little bit late. And there is this instructor who's teaching this lady on grip and swing and all that, and wasn't even talking to me.
Right.
And ever since then, and this must have been 15, 20 years ago, every time I pick up a golf club, I hear what that instructor was saying. Yep. And I haven't been able to hit a golf ball worth a damn since.
Yep. That's how our mind works. And the whole idea is you want to clear that up. Otherwise, your mind isn't able to perform. And if you realize, in our program, it's called the Inspired Performance Program. It's all built around performance. Trauma interferes with performance. And so what I say to everybody, there's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with your mind. Your mind does everything for a reason. It's calling you into some sort of an action. The question is the action possible? So if it's a trauma-related issue and your mind is not okay with what happened to you, it's actually viewing that old information in real time, saying, fix it. Well, it's not possible to fix it because it's not happening. So that's what the TIPP program resolves. The TIPP now is going to deal with, is there a way to fix the problem now? And if there is, just like you talked about with your roof, your mind didn't know, right, that this is going to get fixed. So it kept telling you to fix it, right? But you had started the action to fix it, but your mind wants it fixed now. So we'll teach you some ways to calm that down so it stops calling for the action.
One of the things that I always have to keep in mind when I'm going through almost anything, I'm a big fan of the 4 Agreements that was written by Don Miguel Ruiz. I think everybody should read that book.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I really cling to a lot is making assumptions, or not agreeing not to make assumptions or listen to them, because I have never experienced nothing that was as bad as this was telling me that it would be. And I always have to remind myself of that. Nothing is ever going to be as bad or worse than you think it's going to be, that your mind is going to tell you it's going to be. I just have to stop sometimes and remind myself of that it's not going to be bad. Most of the stuff that's coming up in my mind isn't going to be true. It's not going to happen. So I don't know if that's part of your program thinking that way, but it's certainly what I think about a lot of the times, is trying my very best to dismiss all the assumptions that are going on in my head or in my subconscious, because most of it's never going to come to fruition anyway.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. So we have to look at how our minds work. So we have two distinct parts in our mind. We have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is operating on a response basis. It doesn't think. It just responds to its environment. There's no thinking involved. It's just, if a lion shows up, your nervous system will respond and you'll feel it, right? That's not thinking. That's just responding. That's how animals live. They're constantly living in a response state. We have this conscious part of our mind that's operating about 5%. 95% is still subconscious. So if your subconscious is only dealing and responding to what it sees or hears, right? What happens is your conscious mind thinks about something, a worst case scenario. And here's the problem. When does your subconscious mind think it's happening? Now. So the more your conscious mind starts thinking about all these horrible things that could happen, you keep activating your nervous system. No animal could possibly do that. It's only humans. And eventually, maybe we got a 5%, 95%, 5% conscious, 95 subconscious. Maybe one day it's 50-50 and we stop that, right? But right now, at the advancement and the stage we're at, right, we're still not that advanced. We're somewhat advanced.
It's interesting you say that, because my wife and I went to South Africa a few years ago and went on safari, which actually is just life-changing to go and see something like that. And very fortunate that we were able to go and do it. But we would see these gazelles just grazing in the grass and whatnot. And 50 feet away would be a pride of lions. But they weren't looking at the lions.
Right.
If they ever turn around and looked at the lions, they take off and go.
Exactly.
But really, it is the way the animals are. It is out of sight, literally out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
If they don't see it, then there's no cause for reaction to it.
Perfectly designed system. Turns on when it's necessary, turns off when it's not necessary. We have the exact same system. That's our subconscious mind, but we store all the information about lions. So we think about lions periodically. We remember the lion chasing us yesterday. And every time we do that, our system goes into activation, and that's stressing out the system.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be super destructive on your system if you're just constantly worrying about something or constantly living in fear of things that aren't happening, or fearful of things that may have happened 30 years ago.
Yep.
You just have to remind yourself that none of that's happening now. You can't change that. None of that's going on right now. Every now and then, even after your program, every now and then, I'll think of something that'll make me sad and whatnot. But I've learned to quickly dismiss it. Something that makes me sad, or something that I may regret, something bad that had happened, but that's over with. That's overdone. Couldn't change it, no matter how much money you spent or how much energy you spent. You can't change it. You move on. And the one thing that I've learned, Dr. Don, is that for me and for most people that I know, you have to, I always have to remind myself, even from a lot of the bad decisions that I've made in my life, and the poor choices that I've made in my life, down the road, there were blessings that came from those. You just, but it's difficult to see that in the now, but I have to remind myself of that.
Well, it's like, that's why going through the program, and we went through the program with you, is Tiger Woods has a coach, right? Yeah. Because Tiger Woods can't see that his club closed 1 degree at the top of his swing. Right? So once you understand that, you can make the adjustments to it, right? So that's the whole point of the program, is to tell you how your mind works, let you make the adjustments, and then it's life-changing.
Oh, it absolutely is.
I had a great way. This is a guy I worked with at 9/11, and I used this story. And he still, I talk to him periodically from time to time, and he still talks about this, the impact it had. Because the mind responds to stories, symbols, and metaphors, our subconscious mind. And so I said to him, I said, here's the difference between the animal mind and the human mind. I said, let's just say that you were standing on the side of a lake and you were feeding ducks bread, and you were throwing all the bread into the ducks. And all the ducks were eating the bread, except one duck hadn't gotten any bread. So you go out of your way to make sure you get closer to that duck. You toss the duck the bread. He gets the bread in his bill, and just when he's ready to eat it, another duck comes along and steals the bread right out of his mouth, right? Now, if you could talk to the duck, you'd say something like, can you believe the nerve of that duck stealing the bread right out of your mouth in front of all your friends? And you know what the duck would say? What bread?
What bread?
It's over, right? That duck's not sitting around thinking, what do the other ducks think about me? That guy just totally humiliated me. I've got to get back at that duck. It's over because the duck doesn't store the information about that. It's always in the present.
Yeah, because one thing Ruiz will talk about, and this is absolutely true, you know, human beings, we are the only of God's creatures that constantly relive their mistakes.
Yeah.
No animal does that.
Nope. None of them do. And so it's a perfectly designed system, right? Designed to protect them and designed to let them live at peace. And I always say that, you know, a zebra can't feel fear of a lion unless there's a lion present. Zebras aren't thinking about lions. They don't remember the lion that chased them yesterday. They can't imagine a lion. But if a lion shows up, their autonomic nervous system will engage to protect them, just like you were talking about with the gazelles.
Yeah. So in adopting that mindset for people, which I know it is a practice. Yeah, I went through your program list and everything. It is a practice. It was very changing for me. I sleep better. I think better. You know, every aspect of my life has improved ever since I went through your program. But like a big, for example, I work with a lot of executives in corporate America, and what's kind of unfortunate is a lot of these corporate cultures, especially with middle management, is really a lot like a high school in a way, the drama and all this stuff. And there's a lot of things that I had a conversation with one of them today who is going through something right now that to me seems very silly, but this person doesn't feel like they're getting the recognition that they feel like that they deserve. And it is creating an anxiety in this person that honestly, I've never seen before. And I've known this person for probably 15 years.
Wow.
How do you deal with that when you're dealing with the stresses of something like, because for me, it's just, I know how I would deal with it. I would just, you know, quit the job is what I would do. You know, he's not going to do that. So how do you deal with that when you feel like you're not getting the recognition, and or you feel like you're being, you know, call it bullied around in a work environment, and maybe you're just too afraid to speak up or whatever? How do you deal with something like that?
Well, that's exactly what the new program is sort of designed to deal with. The anxiety is his mind saying, this is not okay. We want it to be different. So he has to get to the point where he says, can I make it different or can't I make it different? If he can't make it different, then he has to decide whether or not he wants to stay or go. If he's going to stay, then what he's dealing with is just going to continue. He has to be either okay with that or he has to do something about it. But his mind is calling for some resolution. And if he's just getting anxious and doing nothing about it, just accepting it, right, then his mind will continue to call for that action. So he's got to get to a a line in the sand, so to speak. How's he going to handle this?
Well, my advice to him, which it's like I had a friend of mine call me one day and he's thinking about getting divorced, and he's telling me all about his, what he hopes to be his soon to ex-wife. She does this, she does that. And I said to him, don't talk to anybody about this, because I can't change your wife.
Right.
Your mom can't, no one can. If you have a problem with someone, all you're doing is just aggravating the problem, talking to family, talking to friends, because typically a lot of people who are going to vent about a problem that they have are typically going to only tell people who they think are going to agree with them in the first place. So they're not really getting anything constructive out of that. I said, the only two people that can change this is you and your wife. So don't have this discussion with me. Don't have it with, with your mom or your best friend or whatever. Have the discussion with them, because, and again, going back to the assumptions, is that when you really make your feelings known to the other person, I think 10 times out of 10, you're going to be shocked at how they're going to react, because it's going to be nowhere nearly as bad as you think it's going to be.
They may even be surprised that you have the problem.
Absolutely.
You may have created it in your own mind.
Absolutely.
I'll give you another great example. So this is a lady who, she came to me, she went through the program and it was great for her. She said, this is sort of what sort of prompted the TIPP Now kind of a program, these kinds of things. She comes back, she goes, everything is so great. It's improved dramatically. She says, however, my mom can drive me crazy, right? And she'll come in and she'll, complain to me about stuff. And she says, and it's so frustrating. And she says, I play tennis with her and my sister. And she says, she gives me an example. She says, I'm there and I tell my mom that my daughter has to go back to school. I don't want to have to vaccinate her, but she can't get into school if I don't. Right. And so she says, my mom brings out her phone, starts sending me all these articles on the dangers of the vaccination. And she says, and it just drives me crazy. She says, what do I do in those kinds of situations? And I said, here's what you do. I said, first of all, right, you have 100% of your energy available, right, when you get up in the morning. You have to decide how much of that energy are you going to give to your mother, right, on that subject. And what you have to remember is that how much energy do you want for your children? She has 3 kids. Are you willing to give away that energy to your mom, right, and lose it for your kids, right? That was what she needed to hear, because then she had I can't do that, right? That's hurting my children. Now, is her mom trying to hurt her children? No. And I said, so the way you respond is you say something like this, Mom, I know how much you love her, right? And I greatly appreciate how much you want to take care of her, but I'm here to play tennis today, and I don't have the energy to devote to that conversation right now. Let's just go play tennis. I said, if you can't put that divide, that wedge in there, then you just have to walk away and just don't allow that energy drain.
I was laughing when you were talking about your mom, about her mother, because I have a mom who's 82 years old, who, boy, she is really a piece of work, but she can go off on these tangents, and I will admit sometimes that she drives me nuts too.
Yep.
Sometimes, but I have to stop though and think, I'm very grateful that she's still around to drive me nuts.
Yep. Yeah.
And the other thing too, and I think not only does this apply to people like that, but maybe it even applies to my friend who's a corporate executive and whatnot. But particularly what I find in a lot of older people like my mother and some of the others that I know, they feel the need to have some sort of relevance one way or another.
Yep.
They really do. And am I wrong about that?
No, because connection is very powerful.
Yeah.
It's a sense of safety. If I'm connected and people are listening to me, right? It's like the Mumbai tribe in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying hello, they say, I see you. So that's how they greet each other. I see you. I see you. People want to be seen and heard. That's what they're doing because it makes them feel safe.
It does. And that's even what I tell people in sales all the time, because I train salespeople that work with me and with other companies and whatnot. Everybody wants to be listened to and understood. Everyone does. And the only way that you can really make that happen is don't talk, ask.
Yes.
Have them speak out their wants, their needs, their truth to you. And when you do that, not only does that make them feel safer and disarms them, it makes them far more willing to really open up and share with you what their problems are. And it helps them build more trust in you.
Yeah. And another great tool to use in that is to come back. If they're talking to you about something, you could use a phrase like this: help me to understand what you would like me to do for you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Help me to understand what I can do for you.
Right. Because if they're just venting, just say, well, I can't help you if you just vent, right? Is there something that I can do right now for you to help you with this? Chances are they're going to go, well, not really. I was just sort of complaining, right? Well, I can't help you just to listen to you complain. What can I do to help you?
But what I love about that statement, Dr. Don, is it disarms them.
Totally.
It totally disarms them. And that's kind of the goal with everything. Like, I was listening to someone one day and they were talking about, you ever go to a car lot and you're walking around and you see the sales guy walking, you're like, oh shit, I don't want to avoid eye contact. And you're like, hey, I'm just looking. Well, what this guy would do is he would walk up and say, hey, are you just looking? You don't really want to buy anything today, do you?
Right.
No, we're just looking. Well, if you don't mind me asking, what are you kind of looking for? Because I don't even know if we even have those or not.
Yeah. Takeaway, right?
Yeah, it's just a takeaway. I don't even know if we even have it or not. I can help point you in the right direction, but you can look at it. But if you're not planning to buy car, just looking, I just want to help you, check out the one that you want. And something like that just totally disarms them.
Yeah. And just even going back to that same question, is there anything I can do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? As opposed to, what do you want to buy? Or what are you looking at? Right. Just when you say, how can I help you? Or what can I do to help you? Right. That help is such a powerful word.
Yeah.
That it basically suggests I care. Right. And so I want to help you. Right? And if they say, well, I'm just looking, perfect. Great.
Yeah.
So let me know if I can help you with anything.
Yeah. Just go look. Just go look. Because one thing that I've learned in my sales trainings and whatnot, and just life in general, I have pretty much eliminated the word why out of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, Dr. Don, why do you have that picture of Florida behind you? Well,
I don't know.
you would think, and you wouldn't know if I was being sincere, if I was being a smart ass or what.
Yeah.
Or if I said, Dr. Don, how did you find that picture, that painting?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same question.
It's just worded different.
It's just worded differently. One is abrasive and the other one is more curious and engaging.
Well, one is challenging. Like why is like, it's almost like what you're saying is, I don't like that picture. Why did you pick it? Right?
I do like the picture. I do like the picture, by the way.
Okay. But it's funny how when people, if you really ask them, when you say a question like that, why they get defensive, because it sounds, right? It's the way they filter.
Yeah.
They're being challenged. Why did I buy it? Now they have to defend why they bought it, as opposed to tell me how you found that picture. It's totally, now they're just describing it, almost like I would like to get a picture like that. How did you find it?
How did you find it? So you've met my wife before.
Yep.
Okay. Grew up in Russia. Their whole syntax is totally different.
Oh, sure.
It's totally different. And I have to admit, it took a while to get used to it. And because like instead of her asking me, will you walk the dog? It's, you will walk the dog.
Yeah. And then it sounds like a command, right?
It sounds like she's barking orders. And so, comrade in Russian is tovarish. So sometimes she'll do that. And just kiddingly, I like snap my heels and go, da tovarish.
That's funny. Yep. But it's so true. Just different languages, different cultures, the way they respond to things.
Mm-hmm.
If they're hearing it, I talk about the words and the music, right? The words may say something to you, even though the music was not intended that way.
Mm-hmm.
So their music is loving, but their words don't fit the music.
Exactly.
And then you take offense to it. It's so easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with texting. It's like texting. Have you ever started to text something and you go, I can't write it that way. It sounds like I'm saying it differently.
Texting is the worst form of communication there is.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the worst.
Yep.
Because
even emails do that too. I have to be very careful. I'm emailing and I have to go back and change it because I'll say, like, they're probably going to hear that totally different the way I just worded that if I don't take my time to think about it.
Mm-hmm. If I need to get a hold of somebody and it's important,
right,
the most guaranteed way for me to get them to call me back and talk to me, right, I will just text them 3 words: we need to talk.
Uh-oh, that's always
and they'll call me up like, gee, what's wrong? Oh, nothing's wrong. I need to go over this with. Well, you could have. I said no, because then you wouldn't have called me back.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to talk and talk about assumptions. If your wife were to text you right now, Don, we need to talk. Right. The assumptions will be rolling through your head. Like, what did I do this time?
Sure. Yeah. And then if you just add one word at the end of it, soon, takes all the fear out of it. We need to talk soon.
Yeah. Talk soon.
Okay. Well, there's no emergency, right? I'll go back to Jeff next week on that.
Yeah, but I will. I'll do that at least 2-3 times a week. I'll try to get a hold of someone, can't, and I'll have something really important. I'll just say we need, or I'll go, we need to talk now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, even the now, right, changes it.
The now
that's even more. Now or soon totally changes that same sentence.
Yeah, but I think what you're doing is so important. I think what you're doing is critically important, especially after going through the program, because I didn't have the best childhood. I don't blame my father for anything. I don't blame anybody for nothing. Actually quite grateful for the experiences I went through, because blessings did come from that for sure.
Yep.
In fact, I did a dedication for my book, and I wrote it, dedicated to my father, who's been dead for 8 years. And I said, I couldn't have done it without you.
Yep.
Yeah. So all the gratitude and whatnot, but it's so critical that people not blame, their past for where they are, to take action for where they are. And as you say in your illustrate vividly in your program, whatever it was, when I was 13 years old and my father was beating the hell out of me, it's not happening now.
Right.
That's over. It's done with. It's not happening now.
Yep. And I talk about too the atmospheric conditions.
Mm-hmm.
What would create a man to beat his child, right?
Yes.
There has to be some pain on his side, something that happened in his life to create that kind of anger against a child that he's supposed to be protecting and loving. Now, we
Yes.
don't have to be okay with it. We're not going to let him off the hook about it. But if we then understand that it couldn't have happened any other way based on the way his mind was filtering through his atmospheric conditions.
And
It totally changes.
I found out after he had passed away, I learned that his childhood was awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I actually had a really good childhood. He just, it was these little moments that were a little traumatizing, but his was terrible. It really was. And so not only did that help me understand where he was coming from, but more importantly, it helped me to forgive him.
Yep. And understanding is the key,
Yeah,
because when you understand that it couldn't have happened any other way,
that's right.
right? We get to our own peace. That's what really changed my wife's life, because she had a very traumatic childhood with her father as well. And everybody said, well, you need to forgive him, otherwise you won't heal. She didn't need to forgive him. She just needed to understand that he had some pain that was creating his anger.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not okay. We're not saying, oh, that's fine, don't worry about it. No, it's wrong. He's still responsible for his behavior. But if his mind's filtering through his own personal set of atmospheric conditions,
Mm-hmm.
and the mind's looking at his trauma, you can see where the anger's coming from. Why is his mind angry? Because it wants it to be different, but it can't be different. So his mind continues to use anger to try to make something happen that's impossible to happen. That would get the mind pretty angry, right? If I kept saying to you, Jeff, fix this, fix this, fix this, and you don't fix it, I'm going to get really mad.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't fix it. That's
No.
what he doesn't know. Right. So it's like, you go up to somebody and you say, I want you to push this building over. I'm going to give you 2 hours. Just stand there and work as hard as you can. They're not going to push the building over. It's impossible to do. Right. They'll just get tired and sweaty. Right. And no matter how long you give them, they're still not going to be able to push the building over. So there's where the issue comes in. And, it's one of the things that I talk about, even that's what depression is.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the atmospheric conditions there. I really believe, because I've seen this happen a couple of times, that there are things that could seemingly be going on with you now,
right,
that could be protecting you down the road.
Yes.
I was at Publix one time, and this lady in front of me, I was in a hurry. This lady was in front of me. She was just taking her time. She's one of these coupon queens. It's just nuts. And so she finally got out of the way. I wasn't in a good mood. And so as I'm leaving, she delayed me by a few minutes. As I'm leaving, there are these cars about to pull out of Publix, and some big truck had a blowout and crashed into 2 of them and killed 3 people.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, if this lady had not had these coupons and been in front of me, that probably could have been me.
Sure.
Or I'm sure it would have been me. So that really had an impact on me in terms of, well, if things are happening, they're happening for a reason. I just don't know what they are.
Right. And we just, again, have to just understand and accept that things couldn't be any different than they were, including that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. But
when you get to that, boy, that brings about that peace.
It really does.
It was really funny when I was a kid. I don't know why I used to think like this, but I remember asking my mom, like after we finished playing a hockey game, and then we're driving home, and I would say, okay, we won the game 3-1. If we played that game 2 hours from now, would we have won it 3-1? And
No.
my mother used to just go, we don't know. We have no idea. It happened exactly the way it happened, right? We don't know what would happen 2 hours from now, right? But whatever happened, happened. I was always trying to figure it out, how things would be different, but they can't be different.
That's like when I lived in Atlanta, I was an Atlanta Braves season ticket holder. So I went to a lot of games, and you go to these double headers, and then you'd have one game where, the Braves would, lose. And then you'd have the next game to where they would just blow the other team out, or vice versa.
Yep.
Same players, same day, same everything, but two different games that the results of those games are totally and completely different.
Yep. Depending on where that pitcher was throwing the ball that day, and the hitters were seeing it really well, and all those kinds of things, all those factors that come into it are just like a huge puzzle.
Exactly.
And no two puzzles are going to look the same.
Yeah. And that's why I always think that, every decision you make, no matter how minuscule it might be, has an impact down the road.
Yep.
They all do. Every decision you make practically has some sort of impact on what you do, how you react, and what happens.
So the key is to be able to keep your mind, right, as free as possible, so that you can make the best possible decisions. If your mind is bringing in a whole bunch of useless data about previous things, how good are your decisions going to be? Not very good. That's what we do in the TIPP program, is we clear your mind from looping through that old trauma, right? So that it can then just respond to what's happening now.
That's so important, because I can tell you, you probably already know this, but a lot of people maybe not. Every bad decision I've ever made came from emotions.
Yep.
Every single one.
Yep.
And I'm no different than anyone else. So the more that you have your mind clear, the more that you can see things objectively, the more that you can see things in the now, the better decisions you make. And that is why what you do is just so important. So, Dr. Don, if people want to get a hold, go ahead.
I want to share one more story. There's a guy that just a few weeks ago, one of our people went out to Phoenix because they have a rehab facility, for people stuck in addiction. So they want to use our program. So the doctor and the couple people were there said, can you just take us through the program so that we can understand what it is? So our guy went out there to take him through it. And they all said the same thing. They said, we've sort of cleared any kind of trauma that we have in our lives. So, we're not doing the program to sort of help us. We just want to experience it so we know what people. So it was like, okay, that's good. And I always talk about energy, that when we free up this energy, right? That's why I would love working with athletes, because it shows up so quickly. You actually change how much energy is available for you presently. So anyway, they went through the whole program. 2 weeks later, I get a text from him showing me a picture of a golf course with a red line going through the golf course. And he said, this is the route that I run every day. I've run it 160 days. And then he left me a voice message saying, my girlfriend said to me, would you slow down? Why are you running so fast? And he says, I'm not running fast. I'm just running. And she goes, no, like you're like running a lot faster. And he says he looked at his time for the last 2 weeks. He had increased his time so much, he didn't even know it.
Wow.
He said, and his girlfriend was like, what are you doing? He didn't even notice how much improvement he had had in his time. Not because he always didn't have that capability. A lot of that energy was getting stuck in that loop.
Absolutely.
When you free it up, that ATP, the mitochondria in the cell, frees up that energy. We perform better.
Yeah. And we all need that, don't we?
Yep.
We all do it. So, Dr. Don, if people want to get a hold of you, which I hope a lot of people get in touch with you, because I think this program is so needed. by really everyone. How do they do that?
So they can go to our website, which is the inspiredperformanceinstitute.com, or they can go to get TIPP, GET, and then the program is TIPP.com. And then they can find out, and you see a whole bunch of testimonials from people who have gone through the program, experienced, life-changing things for them. So you can research and find out what we're doing.
And you've got stories from Gulf War veterans, from 9/11 victims, from Boston Marathon bombing victims.
Yep.
And just watching the testimonials of these people, it's just wonderful what you're doing, and how it's helping people, and you certainly are helping make the world a better place. And I love that. So I'm very appreciative for your program, for what it's done for me and my wife. It hasn't fixed her English any, but it's helped a lot of other stuff.
You will walk the dog after this.
You will walk the dog after this. Yeah. If she listens to this, there's an ass kicking in my future. That's for sure.
Yep. Very good. Well, I appreciate the time, Jeff.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Don. I really do appreciate it. And follow him. You're on Instagram.
Yeah. LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those.
All right. Dr. Don, I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to talk to you, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Too.